Well, I show that it's the bottom of the hour, so let's get started. This is Ann Hayner again with Leahy. Welcome to the webinar. This is going to be a real casual webinar. We're just kind of going to explore some effective ways to work remotely if you're using the Synergy tool or if you're even thinking about it. So I've got a number of little things to kind of show you and talk about. And then I'll do that for a little while, and then we'll take some questions. There is a way, if in the GoToMeeting controls, if you'd like to ask questions there, or you can raise your hand and we'll stop and take those questions as well. We have a moderate number of people that are on the call today, which is great. So let's get started with just exploring some things that we can do to help you work better from home, especially if you're using Synergy. One of the things that I'm going to focus on today is talking about workflow and requests. And one of the things that we put in the description of the webinar was how to know who has the ball and what they're doing with it. And a lot of that has to do with using your workflow requests effectively. So I think most people are familiar with the concept of a request. It's basically some kind of an action that has to happen. And it may be something strictly internally, it may be something externally, but there are some things you need to get set up correctly in order to make sure that your requests work properly and to make sure that you're notified that you have work that's going to be done. So especially when you're remote, email is not the best option for trying to figure out what you're going to be doing today. Workflow is a more robust option for you. So let's talk about some prerequisites to effective using of workflow. One of the first things is making sure that you get notified if you have new workflow. So you can do that up here with the gear that's next to your name. So if you're looking at my screen, I'm in the upper right-hand corner here, and I'm clicking on this gear, which is Synergy Settings. And I click on that, and then I want to be in the workflow section of all these different menu options here. I want to be in the workflow section, and I want to make sure that I've checked the box to alert me for workflow. And then I can turn on a pop-up if I like, which means I'll get a little notification in the lower right-hand corner. It pops up kind of right down here on your monitor. And how long that pop-up will sit there and tell you. You can, if you like sound, you can have it play a sound. If you're working across a terminal server with Synergy and don't have sounds, then you've got, none is an option too. And you want it to refresh every few minutes so that it lets you know about something new. Now you've got choices here. I usually keep it at five minutes because I want it to refresh regularly. If you don't want to be prompted that often, you can do that. The other thing you can do is actually have it show you some details of the request when it pops up to remind you. But the biggest thing is to just turn on the alert workflow there and then save it. Once you do that, when a request arrives from anybody, whether you created it yourself or whether you have something that you are, being tasked by someone else to do, then you're going to get a little number that appears here. And I think I'm going to dock my left pane and just keep it out there. So you're going to get a count, just like you do when you look at unread mail. And so I now have 2 new pieces of workflow that are out here. And if I click on workflow and go to look at it, I can also filter by unread, but you can see that these are bold. So obviously I can see my workflow without being notified by coming in and looking at unread things. But it's important, if you're really going to use Synergy to remind you about things, to know what's new and has come in, and you have to get that turned on in order to do that. So let's see if I can get my menu to dock and stay. There we go. Okay, so that's one of the things that I would suggest that you do, is turn on that alert for that. Now the next thing I'd like to talk about is if you're creating requests that involve other people, particularly those that have to approve things, that you make sure that your org chart is set up correctly. So we're just going to go look at me right now and look at the org chart that's attached to me. It's important here to make sure that your managers are set up correctly for people. So who is my manager in my demo company? It's John Clark. And who are my subordinates? Many pieces of workflow have to be approved by the manager. of a resource. So for instance, when I want to take a vacation, I have to make sure that my manager, John, knows about that and that he gets the approval. If I don't have my org chart set up properly, then requests that require approval by the manager of a resource are going to be a problem. So if I look at who my subordinates are here, you can see that I've got a subordinate here. And then if I look at him, I can see that he has other subordinates. So it's important to get all these people set up correctly so that things will move correctly. And that's one of the reasons that I have some workflow right now, is that I've got subordinates that want to take a vacation. So here's my direct subordinate, Chuck, who wants to go on vacation, and it routed to me because I'm the manager of that person. So the person requesting the vacation is my subordinate, and now it's coming to me. So get alerts turned on, get the org chart set up right so that you've got the proper relationships with people, and you'll find that workflow and requests will operate a lot more a lot more accurately for you. Now, it's really, really easy to know who's got the ball with things in workflow. It's not as easy with an email, especially if an email goes to more than one person. You don't necessarily know who's going to respond to it and take that action. So I would strongly suggest that you make use of a couple of different requests that come out of the box in Synergy. And if you've not seen these, you need to explore them a little bit, but there's two real simple ones. So let's go create a request and let's just talk about two that are very simple. Notice that they're grouped here, different kinds, and that requests that I've recently created pop up to the top, which makes it easy to use. But I want to explore two that are a little farther down here. One's called a to-do with a reply, and the other one's just a to-do. We're going to talk about to-do with reply first. This one has 3 steps. It starts by being created by someone, and then it goes to whoever's in this person box here, whoever's the person to do the work, and then it comes back to let me know who's supposed to do the work. So let's just task John Clark to do something for us. Let's ask John. No, not a proposal, but a proposal. And we're going to attach it to an account because we want to do that. And my little demo company is busily working with a company called Disney. So I imagine you all know about Disney. And we're not going to attach it to an item, but when this comes back to me, I'd like to have a document associated with it, right? So I'm asking John to do this. And here's another thing that's important. If you really want to start using Synergy and knowing about when things are being done and when they should be done, it's important to put dates on requests so that you have some accountability. I think that's one of the biggest things that Synergy gives you, is not just accountability, but the ability to assign and assume different tasks so that you know who has the ball. So we're going to give something to John here, and it's going to flow right to John. And so we're going to hit the create button, and it's going to create some new workflow. And now I don't have it anymore, but I can always see what I created by saying, what did I create? By changing the involvement that I had with the request, by looking at things that I've created. Okay, so there's the request that I created. There's the person who has the ball right now, right? And if I go look at it again, I can clearly see that the ball is in John's court. So I'm waiting now for him to do something with it. And if I look at his workflow, let's go back to mine and we'll just change the person, because you can do this. I can go look at what he is working on. I can see that there's nothing else pending for him right now. He's not a very busy guy. So there's no reason that he couldn't get this done and have this new work ready for me to review. So when John comes in and does this task, it will come back to me once he actually acts upon it. So that's a tiny little 3-step request, right? I just create it, it moves to John to act on it, and then when he gets done and realizes it and attaches his document here, he processes it back to me, and then perhaps I have another step. Okay, so let's talk about related requests and how easy it is to then create something else from this. Because once John sends this back, perhaps I have more work to do with it. I can take this, if I've got more work to do with this particular customer and this document John's going to give me, I can copy requests easily. So I can copy this, and perhaps it's not exactly the same kind of a request. Maybe this is just something for me to do. I can click on the to-do task, which is only a 2-step, and it will copy information, and it'll say, okay, Ann, how much of this did you want to copy forward? Well, not the dates, because I'm going to get to this at another time. And it's not exactly the same thing, but it's similar. So, but I am going to change the person and the dates. So now I'm going to create a new request from that other request, and notice that it inherited that it was for Disney, and that I now have the chance to change my dates. So we'll say that my work's not going to be done until Thursday. And if I'm even keeping track of hours, I can put down the fact that I think what I have to do, and I have to basically finalize and send it. Okay? So now I know what I'm going to be doing, and without re-entering everything, I simply created another request. And in a minute, you're going to see that my workflow is going to turn to a 3 from a 2. We'll just leave it sit there for now. Okay, so we're talking about using 2 simple request types that are out of the box, to do and to do with reply, that are real easy to use, and virtually anybody, if the requests have been set up the way they were designed, anybody can use them to keep track of things that they're doing or to task others to do. Now let's talk about another setting that's really helpful, because I kind of alluded to it just a minute ago. Sometimes it isn't clear who should do something, and you have to send it to more than one person. In that case, you're oftentimes going to use a role to send some work to someone. And when that happens, you need to enable the ability for people to assume work and to assign work within getting that. So let's go take a look at one of those. So we're going to jump to modules and workflow. And we're actually going to look at designing a request type that's already in the system here. And let's just look at this one right here. Now what we're talking about aren't the fields that appear, but the flow of the work. So when we look at work that has to pass through multiple steps and possibly has to pass through a role, if we choose a role here, and we'll just say that it's the project manager because this is project related, we have the ability over here to automatically approve, and we have the ability to assume ownership and assign ownership. When I enable these two, I can enable the people that are involved in this activity by saying it's just the current people in that role, or I can say that it could be assumed by anyone, and the same thing applies to assigning it. I have different areas, and again, if you're not using divisions and cost centers, some of those are probably not appropriate. But can I assign this to my subordinates or to others, or can I assign something like this to everyone? When you assume and assign, then additional buttons appear on workflow, and that lets people say who has the ball with something. All right, so we're making a small change to this internal project type request. So now we're going to save that, and we're going to go kick off the request, and you'll see what we did. And I need to find my internal project. And I'm a big fan of using Control F in the browser in order to quickly find things on screens. Okay, so now we have the ability to do this. We put in some task for someone to do. All right. And we're going to attach it to a project because we have various projects set up. And again, we haven't talked a lot about projects yet, but projects are, lots of different functionality, have lots of different functionality and about how long do I think this is going to take, and again, I can do that. And it's going to route to that project manager, but the project manager will be able to assume it or assign it to someone else. So again, we're going to use this little cheat sheet to go back and look at things I created. And here's the task for the manager. And I've got assign, and I can give it to somebody else if they're the ones that need to take it. So when I assign it, then I get a list because I told it anybody, and I can tell it that in this case, we'll just give it to Carrie, and Carrie can do the work, right? Yeah, okay, so this is someone that doesn't have that right. But you see you get the idea. So there's this ability to assign work, and then we know who's got the ability, who's got the accountability, right, for that. Okay, so we're talking about simple ways to use workflow, making sure that we can assign and assume work if it's appropriate, using task and task with reply, all of that. Okay, that's a quick, I just wanted to talk for a few minutes on workflow and requests because they are really important in terms of knowing who has the ball and what they're doing with it. Don't forget that you've got also a log. So when you have a request that's been created and you're not certain if someone else has actually looked at that, this thing that we've created, you can go up to data logs, which are in the icons across the top. So this is the little data icon up here, and it will tell you who has looked at this request and when they looked at it. So, and when it was last changed. So it has been looked at by somebody. So there's data logs and there's red logs, both. All right. So we have the ability to look at not only the definition of the workflow, but we can look at the log of what's been changed on it, and we have the red log that tells if somebody's looked at it. So if you've tasked someone else to do some work and they haven't even looked at it yet, it's a pretty sure thing that they're not looking at their workflow and they don't have their unread indicator turned on over here, right? So don't forget about logs that the system has that can help you know if the person you've tasked to do something is actually working on it for you. All right? Okay, so let's talk about something else that's important when you're sharing information with folks and you're all working remotely and you can't holler at people down the hallway, right? Let's talk about the importance of keeping good information to share with your colleagues. So here's this mythical company that I've been working with lately, trying to close a big deal with them, right? And it's important always to share contact information with people. So we don't just deal with Walt Disney anymore. We have other contacts that we deal with. So it's really important when you're adding contacts that you don't just put them in your own private directory, if you will, but that you periodically make sure you're getting things set up on your contact cards and that you're putting accurate emails and notes and information in contacts. So it's extremely important to share information when you're working remotely so that people know that you're doing things with someone. So if I've got somebody new and I'm dealing with them at Disney, then I want to make sure that I'm adding them into Synergy, and we'll just add Donald Duck. And we'll say that he's perhaps a project manager for Disney, because he's going to be working with us in some capacity, and we want to be able to have everybody know that, and we want to make sure we get his email address in here. Yeah, disnet.com. Let's not do that. Okay. And notice that when I put that in, that Synergy validated the email address in terms of having the right format and that it checked an email permission box. Now, I'm going to save him, and we're going to go back out. And we're going to look here on the account card because we've got both of those. We notice that Walt Disney, however, is still my main contact, and Donald is just a project manager for them. So having some idea what job functionality people have is also another great piece of information to share with folks. So I would strongly recommend that you make a real point of setting up information for your contacts, keeping that all correct, And then if I get a call from Mr. Duck and we want to actually do something for him, notice that I exploded out my buttons at the top here because now I have a task that's related to Donald Duck. So we're going to create a request, and it's actually a to-do with reply. And again, there's something else that we're going to do here, and we're going to associate it with the account and say that there's more to do here, right? And notice that in this case, to do with reply has an account but doesn't have the contact. So it associated it with Disney, but not with Duck, with Mr. Duck. So probably we should expand this request and add the contact name as well so it gets associated with both of them. And again, I'm going to set a date, and I'll show you why we're doing some date things in just a minute. Okay, so you need to make sure that you've got requests designed correctly, that you've got all the data that you need, like contact as well as account if it's customer related. Now let's talk for just a second about sharing information that's relative to the whole company, especially if we're sharing information about activities that might take us out of the office or that might affect our scheduling. Let's talk about the fact that I've been putting dates on all of this, and I'm going to take a look at calendars. So there's a couple different kinds of calendars. One reads certain kinds of requests that you define, and that's this calendar, which has multiple formats that you can look at: week, working week, day, just like you'd expect, kind of like Outlook, right? The only way that things show up, though, on calendars by date is if you've actually attached starting and ending times to things, not just hourly estimates, but starting and ending times. Otherwise, it just puts it up at the top of the day. All right, so that's what I would call an Outlook style calendar, but there's also planning calendars. So as a manager, you get requests from people about when are we taking off, what days are we taking off, and you can fill all that into a corporate calendar in the system and know what holidays we actually have, right? So public holidays go in blue, and when I hover over them, that's Christmas Eve. You know, this is the holiday we're taking for Thanksgiving. You know, here's the Monday that we had for Boxing Day, which is actually in December in England. But so how do we get this calendar set up so that people have some idea about public holidays? Let's go to modules, and let's go to HR, and let's go to set up. And set up public holidays. And again, since this is internationally enabled, we could set it up for multiple countries, but we won't. Okay, so here I've got some days, and I've got Boxing Day on the wrong day, which is why that's showing up in October. But here I've got the holidays that we're going to take off. So when I want to add new days, again, this is typically an HR function. So if we're going to take off, for Memorial Day or the 4th of July next year, you just simply add a date and you tell it what country you're doing it for, and you pick a date, and you can just type the date in here. So we'll just make it easy because we all know that that's Independence Day. And when I save it, it's going to appear now on the next year's calendar. So it's a tiny thing, but it's a helpful thing, and it reduces calls to HR asking for schedules, and it also keeps you from having to send out some kind of a schedule at the beginning of the year to everybody. Speaking of that, let's talk about how to stay in touch with multiple people in your company and keeping up with their information. So let's go back to HR related type things, and let's talk about what shows up for various people in the system, right? I'm an administrator, and I have HR role, which you can see down here in the roles section. So I have the ability to see more information than most people. When you go in to take a look at others that you work with in the people section, it's really helpful to have accurate information in about phone numbers and possibly even the location they're at if you've got multiple locations, or if they're working from home for a period of time like we were talking about earlier. So if you keep things up to date here, then you can train your folks to go and look to see information about someone else. So especially if I'm a new employee and I don't really understand who people are and how to find them, I can find them here and notice that there's basic information just by searching for someone. So if John's phone number is here, or his extension, or his mobile number, I can get to that very easily without, again, having to get a list of phone numbers and extensions, because that stuff changes, right, as people come and go. So you can show people that it's all here for them, and they can basically self-serve, and you're reducing the load on people making phone calls and asking for updated information. So again, as part of the whole thing of keeping your org chart up to date, adding new people when they come in, showing them how to find information, and making sure that basic information is filled out. Now, certain information does not appear for the casual user of Synergy, like individual address information and things like that, because that's considered confidential. All right, let's talk about automating email and things like that. I think we'll probably plan a meeting next year to actually show all of this, but the real key to automating emails being sent is the use of Event Manager, and then indicating who should be getting what kinds of emails. And often that then means that you have to designate within an account user-defined fields that can easily be read by Event Manager. So for instance, we've worked with customers just recently that wanted to send invoices automatically to one or more people on account. So they added user-defined fields to that record, and let's just do this. Let's go back to our Mr. Disney account, and I'll give you an example of what we're going to do here. So if I want to automate the sending of various documents out of Macola or out of Synergy, I'm going to send those then to somebody who's a contact, whether it's Mr. Disney who gets the invoices or Mr. Duck who gets the invoices. So what I need to do then is add some kind of a user-defined field here, kind of like the checkboxes that you can see here that we've done for another customer, and indicate whether or not they should get the invoices. So how do we add user-defined fields to contact cards? Let's talk about that, because it's actually quite simple. You have to have the right role to be able to do it. You have to be able to control some of the CRM functionality. But we're going to go to Modules Customers now, and we're going to go into free fields at the contact level. Okay, and you'll see that we've got different types of data. So I've got dates, amounts, text, right? Lots and lots and lots of stuff here. And I've got yes, no type fields here. So when we were setting something up for another company, they wanted to know whether or not people should get Christmas cards, as an example, as opposed to invoices, but we could change that. And so we're going to co-opt that field, and we're going to actually click on that. We're going to tell it invoice, and we'll just put a question mark. All right. So now that field has a literal, and in this particular case, it's just a yes/no field, right? So now it's whether or not this individual person should get the invoice. There's more sophisticated things that you can do with some of these things too. You can also have drop-down lists of choices with text fields and things like that. So keep in mind that you can have options for certain kinds of text fields rather than just a yes/no. You can have choices that people make. So now let's go back to Mr. Disney. Once in a while, these changes have to percolate through and you have to get out. But let's see if that change happened instantly. All right, so let's edit, and I think probably I have to get back out and let it reread the options, because it should then, oh, nope, it's here, I just didn't see it. So now if I check that box, I could now query the system with Event Manager or in some other way, however I wanted to do it, and find all the people that have an invoice checkbox. So when I'm invoicing, I could go ahead and invoice through Macola and then sweep back through and send Crystal invoices with Event Manager to the designated people. So we can effectively get rid of a lot of paper by starting to send purchase orders, invoices, statements. And again, the trick to this isn't so much the mechanics behind it as it is getting some good data into the system and making sure that we know who it is that should get the documents, and making sure that dduck@disney is actually a real email address that we need to use. So there's lots of ways to get rid of paper by automating the sending of it through email, and more people want to do that. Okay, so we've talked about calendars, we've talked about workflow. Let's see if people have some questions. I wonder if I can flip everybody to an open mic all at once. Okay, I have enabled it. I think you may have to unmute yourselves, and it looks like David's got a question. What version of Synergy am I using here? I'm using Synergy version 258, which is the Macola 10 version. So that was one question that I've got. Are there other people that want to ask questions? If so, raise your hand and I can unmute you again. I think everybody should be able to unmute themselves. At least it looks like. So what other kinds of questions do we have? Questions about account management, contact management, workflow. We haven't talked a lot about documents. That's one more thing I do want to talk about. You're not all speaking, so I'm going to assume that you've either dozed off or you're reading email. Nah. Okay. All right. Let's keep going then. If you've got a question, stick your hand up or unmute yourself and ask. Let's talk about another thing that helps again with people that are having to work remotely, and again especially if you have lots of new people that are joining the organization, right? Training documents are very important. I cannot overemphasize the need to have instructions available to people. So let's talk about a couple of effective ways to do that. Because Synergy has a document management system built right in, it has lots of ways to easily manage documents, all right? So I'm going to go back to my simple little workspace that I've got because I like easy. And I've got a couple of things that I threw together yesterday. One is the ability to create a little list of documents that are related. So in the spirit of training people how to do things, I created a document type called basically how-to instructions. And the beauty of this is that every time someone creates a document and adds it to this kind of a document, this list dynamically expands, okay? So yesterday I added a document for how to add customer accounts to Synergy. And it's just got, a little set of instructions for people. So that's there. So if you acquaint people with documents like this and get them using them, then you've got how to create new prospects, how to save and share documents, what are Synergy security levels all about, things like that. And once you start using these, then they're easy to find because we've gotten organized with them and we've produced a little list. And creating a list like this is really, really simple. So we've got some documentation. Now, the other thing that you can do with Synergy, and again, we'll talk about when I go to create things, when I go and use the plus create and create a new account, I can take some of these same documents that I have here and I can attach them as policy documents here. So now when I'm actually in the action of creating a new account, I've got some instructions tied directly to what do I do when I need to create a customer. So I can open this in a new window. And now I've got my instructions sitting here. And I'll click on the fact that I'm going to create a customer. And I could make my window, or I could, obviously I could slide my document to another monitor if I had to, right? which I don't have in this particular environment, but now I've got my instructions and my screen side by side. So the system lets you do this with workflow. It lets you do this in lots of places. So let's get back out of that. So if I go to create a request, let's go back here. Let's go create a request, and we'll just grab this vacation request. And we want to give some instructions to people for what to do and how to do this. If I go look at the definition here, Synergy tells me this is a out-of-the-box request and I need to be careful with it. But notice here, when I'm defining my request, there's a policy doc that goes with this request. This again is just another document. So I could have a document out here about when to use the vacation request, what to expect, who does it go to, how does that happen. So we'll just stick a document. Now that request, when I go to create it, has its own policy attached right to it. So all I did was add a document to the request itself. We'll go add a vacation request. And up at the top here, I have a policy doc that now appears as a little icon. And again, just like when I was creating an account, if I click on it, I can open it here, and I've got some kind of a document. In this case, I'd want it to display right here. I wouldn't really want to be able to download it. So that's just another way to do something like that. So you can self-document within Synergy how to do things. And again, cut down on calls to the IT department, cut down on calls to the Synergy administrator, whatever it is. So you can add policy documents to requests, policy documents to accounts, and types of accounts that you're going to create. Okay, so let's see. We've talked a little bit about that. So how did I create this list over here of to-do documents? One, I have to have the documents, of course. And in this particular case, to create that little icon, I went to the modules for documents, and I went to documents, and I did what's called a list. And I just gave it a number, and I associated with a header document that just says how to do things, right? And then I told it what type of document. And this is the only place that this is at all arcane or technical, is that in this case, I chose a document type. I gave it just a simple criteria of document type 186, which is my how-to documents. So now anytime we add any kind of document there, it's going to appear dynamically on this list, and I can preview it here, and that's what's there. And then I threw in just a little picture to make it kind of fun. And that's how that gets done. Pretty simple. So now I can create different kinds of lists. The other thing that I did was this guy up here. I played with this a little bit too. This is actually an icon, a widget down here that I created. And this gave me the ability to show just a couple of quick documents here in a grid as opposed to having more of a list. So it depends on how you want them to show up and how many you're going to have. If you're going to have more than just a few, then you probably don't want to use the little widget creator. But you could do it here as well. So, and just tell it what a document list of certain kinds of documents. And if you go in and look at this one that's here, let's go to the design of this. I just told it a dynamic list, gave it the document type. Again, you could create a list of documents created by certain people for certain projects. Again, this is just for quick access, right? And what information did I want to show? Maybe I don't want my account, the author, to show, and I'll just save it. And now Ann Hayner is going to disappear from the display there. And now it just shows the name of the document. So easy, quick stuff. Okay, I haven't got too much more that I was going to talk about today. We've kind of talked about automating, keeping track of stuff, knowing who's got the ball with things by simple workflow, tasks and tasks with reply, the org chart, managing your contacts, keeping them up to date, getting rid of paper by storing things electronically, emails. All right, let's see. I think we've got another question here. Sending email from Synergy versus through Outlook. You can do that with the word merge functionality, which is not set up on this server yet. I've been talking to John to get that set up because I would like to be able to show that to people, but I have to get some stuff set up. The new word merge capability is fabulous. So you can do that out of the box without even getting that set up. I can go back to, well, actually, let's do this. I'm going to change. Oh, I'm going to have to show another screen. Hang on just a minute here. Let me show a different screen. Hang on a second, folks. I'm going to change screens. I want to show you a couple different capabilities, and I want to bring up Outlook. Okay, hopefully you're looking at Outlook now. Let's see. I think you're seeing the right screen. Somebody nod your head. Because the other thing that I can do is go to Synergy and find a contact and click on their name there, and it will start an Outlook email for me. Okay, so that's one thing I can do. And of course, if I'm using the Outlook integration or the Office integration, when I save an email from Synergy, which I can do here with Save As or Save, I can save that email up into Synergy. Now this is going to save it into our live Synergy, not the test Synergy, because I haven't got Outlook running on that terminal server I was on a few minutes ago. So this is taking a live email from one of my favorite people, Stacy Newsom. I don't know if Stacy's on the meeting or not today, and it's going to save it up into Synergy, and I can attach a request to it, which is one of the best ways to do something. So it'll map it to the known contacts, and then I can tell it whether or not I want to attach it to a request. And if I do that and hit the save button, it's going to find Stacy's email, attach it to the customer that Stacy's associated with, and I can create a request all at once. Now just hang on for 1 minute, and it's going to pop up to ask me what kind of a request I want to create for her. And it's the task. And then I can follow up with her. So again, it's asking me what should it use? Yep, it should use Stacy, and it should use the company she's with. And up that comes. And now I can put and again, this is our version of a task. So I put in whatever I want here. I tell it what dates I'm going to be doing this so that I can keep it visible on my calendar. And we've got other fields that we've added here too, right? But once I create that request, now let me, probably the easy thing is just grab my live system over here, and we're going to go look for Stacy. And we got multiple Stacys, but here's Stacy Newsom, right? And we're going to actually look at her and look at the workflow. I could have looked at it at the account level, but here's the new task that just came in via the email, right? So now let's see. Now that seems to have generated some other customers. Or I mean some other questions. Let me see if I can get to those questions. Okay. Yes, the webinar is being recorded. And I will probably get it up through maybe today or tomorrow, probably tomorrow. So the question was asked about sending email directly out of Synergy, and until I get the word merge system set up, it won't do it in the way that I think you're asking about, but I can do it by just coming to Stacy and clicking on her email address and have it launch. And again, it launched on another screen, an email back to Stacy. So I can do it that way. So, okay, I'm just about out of ideas for today. This was not intended to take a terrible long time. I don't see any other questions. Anybody else want to ask something or speak up? Because we're all friends and I would welcome that. You're not saying anything. I hope I've answered the questions that were typed in. I don't see any more. If you launch email, does it save it to the record? Yes, it does. If I save it, it will save it automatically. In fact, I have a save at send option turned on specifically. So I aborted my email that I was going to send to Stacy, but yes, it would save it to the record and attach it both to the account Stacy works for and to her contact card. So it would do that. Anything else? Okay, if not, that's it. We're done. If I don't talk to you before, have a fabulous Thanksgiving. Hope you have good weather. Stay healthy. Cook your turkey sufficiently, and wear your mask. Right? All right. Great seeing everybody today. I appreciate everybody showing up, and we will put the recording out on the YouTube channel. So we'll send that out. Thank you very much.